Hello everyone, this is Shriya,
And this is Sukanya.
and we are back again with yet another episode of Intersectional Feminism Desi Style Season 3, brought to you by Feminism in India.
When we imagine a woman at work, what do we think? Or rather, what are we taught to think of? Right, Shreya? There are certain professions in our society that are assigned to women. Example: workspaces which reflect values like nurture and caregiving, attributes which are very generationally and traditionally assigned to women. So, imagining dynamic workspaces with women who ace up the ladder through their skill sets is slightly alien to us even now. And through the course of this season of our podcast, we've been steadily debunking such workplace gender stereotypes. Today, we're going to speak to someone who works in the field of science. What is it like to be a woman in STEM in our country? What kind of experiences do women in this field have? And how do they address these conflicts? We will find out today.
Absolutely, Sukanya. And to discuss this and more, we have with us a very special guest. She's research scientist in algebra, logic, and rough sets at ISI Kolkata and a senior member of the International Rough Set Society. She's also formerly been with HBCSE, TIFR, Calcutta University, and she's also a prolific feminist and a lesbian rights activist. We are delighted and honored to have with us Dr. Mani. Hello, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. Let's just delve into the question. So, the first thing that I want to ask you is, Doctor, your journey as somebody in STEM has been slightly different from that of a lot of other women. As a lesbian trans woman in STEM, how has the journey been so far, and what are the roadblocks that you've had to face, especially taking up an area of research which is essentially very male?
Yeah, my journey has been quite different in a number of ways. My career has been very non-standard in the first place. For many years, I was doing research work along with working in the industry, basically in the software industry. And I was also teaching for a number of years. And I was doing my research along with it. And much later, I got into things like, much later I did my MSc. But even before my MSc in pure mathematics, I already had published. Before my MSc itself, I had published a lot. And my MSc was in pure mathematics, of course. And even before that, I published a lot in my research field, which is mainly about formal approaches to vagueness. It's called rough sets. And after that, I did my MSc, and then I did my PhD in Calcutta University, and that was relatively more standard. But still, I used to have multiple careers at that time. I used to do my research along with a few teaching assignments or consultancy projects that were outsourced. So that's how my career has been. And I transitioned during my PhD time. So, and of course, I didn't have to interact too much with the departments during that period. So that way it was much better. And I did not face too many problems really. So, though I did professionally, there were some issues with some people, definitely, but otherwise mostly it has been quite smooth. Yeah, and after PhD, I did have some break in my career because because I couldn't immediately get a new posting or something like that. So that is how it has been. But my research has been really good, and I've been quite successful in that. I've published books. So and the roadblocks is yeah, I don't interact with too many people. That is there. Many people don't like to interact. That part is there. And those people are mostly from countries like India. where they don't have enough gender and sex education. So, or they're not, yeah, that's how it has been.
That's very noteworthy, Dr. Mani, because a lot of the time there is the understanding of gender and gender identity and sexual orientation is still very limited when it comes to early academia or our schools and the education system in general. Although there is still a lot more awareness now, the it's still not where we would like it to be. So when you started off, like you said, in your early days of your academic career, uh, what could you tell us a little bit about the biases that you would face because of your identity, not just because you're a woman, who wants to like continue in a field which is very male dominated, looked at as something that men do traditionally. So, are there any biases, any discrimination, any comments that you faced when you were going on with your research?
Um, During my research days, I was almost well established even before my PhD. So that definitely helped because I had a certain status in the rough set community, and I was also in the executive committee of the Indian Rough Set Society. So and that definitely helped. I was actually before transition, I was invited for a number of talks and all within the country, but after transition, the number of talks definitely reduced. It was only those who were more tolerant who would invite, and because things like that happened, and yeah, and that kind of discrimination was there, but and I may have faced other discriminations while applying for specific posts and all. But I really can't know whether I've been discriminated or not because those things are not explicitly stated. So that's how it has been.
Right. Doctor, you have been also, you just spoke about how identity plays such an important role when it comes to how people are treated institutionally and otherwise. So, how important do you think, you just spoke about how there's a lack of sexuality education and gender sensitization in early academia. So, how important do you think is the role of schools and educational institutes when it comes to discussions, especially about the mental health aspect of gender and LGBTQIA plus, issues, addressing identity, sexuality, identifying it. So there's also a huge mental health aspect to it, and there's also a huge sensitization that seems to be missing. So especially in our country, where these conversations at the large are missing, they may have been mainstreamed a little bit now post the 2014 NALSA judgment and the 2018 judgment, etc. But still, socially, there's a lack of these conversations. So, what kind of role do you feel parents, schools, and early education institutions play when it comes to also discussing the mental health aspect of this?
It's of course very important because the absence negatively impacts the well-being of students, and too often parents, relatives, and other peers are but incompetent and harbor misogynist and regressive patriarchal views on the topics. So recently, of course, NCRT tried to improve themselves through specific courses on sex and gender education. And they also involved many stakeholders from the LGBTQ community. But but the whole thing got shelved due to pressure from what should I say, anti-human forces. So that's one thing which happened, and of course, it's really important that people have that students have uh, access to a good gender and sex education at school, and they can of course learn a lot from the internet, but it's not really. But the internet is not really structured. They may unlearn a lot. They may learn uh, they may learn wrong things, and there is It's totally unrestricted, and you find all kinds of content everywhere. Even within Reddits, you find various types of Reddit. Some are hardly progressive, so it depends on what they fall into. So for this reason, a good sex and gender education is important. And then there is the problem of religion, which is often connected with uh, the heteropatriarchy. So, and that causes its own problems, of course, and one has to deal with that too. So, for all these reasons, we do need a good sex and gender education and mental health. Of course, in most schools and educational institutions, they don't care, and yeah, and because of problems with gender or sexuality, people can develop mental health issues. People develop mental health issues even without all that too. So, and those things definitely need to be addressed for a good system.
Doctor, I just also wanted to ask you that when you decided to venture out into STEM to become and become a researcher, to choose this field, etc., what was the kind of response that you had early on in your life from your teachers and your family and relatives, especially when it came to choosing? Were you told to think of something else, or were you asked to justify your decision? What are the kind of, how was it like when you started off?
At school, I think I was really encouraged by specific teachers that I liked, and but my parents were not really pro science and things like that. They were more for engineering and or commerce, or something like that. But of course, I didn't listen to all that, and I even got I cleared the medical entrance examination too. But I didn't join because I wanted to go into either physics or mathematics.
That must have been a lot of pressure to go get into medical, get a medical seat, and then really you must have faced a lot of pushback.
Yeah, that was there. In those times, yeah, it was that. People usually try to go into either medicine, engineering, or commerce, or something like that in those times.
Right. Professor, you're also, like you said, you did what a lot of people were not expecting of you. They were expecting you to go into certain fields, but you chose research, chose your field. So, being an independent researcher, first of all, how is it being an independent researcher? Because research is again something that is not looked at, but whenever somebody says that they are a researcher, often people say, but what is your job? What is the job that you do? So how is it like to be an independent researcher, especially when you are sort of singled out, or does it get
Yeah,
lonely, and how do you bring up the will to persist in the field, uh, and go on?
that being an independent researcher is, first of all, you need to be interested in the subject. You should have some idea of how to proceed with it. Those That's important, and I did try to join specific institutes too, even early on. That was immediately after my BSc. I tried to join the Chennai Mathematical Institute. At that time, it was SPIC, and the fields didn't match. That's why I didn't join that time. I was offered something there, but and so I thought I would do something else later. Uh, so that's what I thought at that time. So, and yeah, for an independent researcher, I think in my case, of course, it was like I had a deep interest in mathematics always, and I knew that researchers need to know a lot more. That is beyond what is taught in MSc and all. Really get into research. I think that practice was That's not exactly followed. I probably misinterpreted it because I developed a very large base than what is usually done by a researcher. Suppose a researcher is working in topology, which is a subfield of mathematics. Then what that person would do is that person would try to learn a lot more of topology only, not going to algebra. So in my case, I think I built up a much larger base, and because of that, my skills in philosophy also improved a lot, and that's how my career got shaped. And I did publish quite a bit as an independent researcher also, even before my MSc, as I said, and uh, and of course, I had simultaneous careers also, which were all part time essentially. Initially, I was teaching for many years. That was part time totally, and then I got into the things like I got into software consultancy basically, and that was also part time. There I had various jobs like jobs in things like machine learning or software specifications and such. And of course, I became an expert in R, in the R language, which is a great tool for computation.
Doctor, listening to your career trajectory and your research trajectory, as one of those kids in school who really had struggled with maths, I am just curious to understand how did this love for mathematics and for computing and everything start? And also connected to it, do you feel that adequate encouragement and adequate recognition of students who have a special liking towards subjects like mathematics and computation, algebra, especially women, do you think that's recognized in our schools? Are they encouraged? We hear so many stories of how students who have extraordinary computation skills and mental math skills and all are very ignored, and how they're not recognized and everything. So how did your love with these numbers and with this field start? How did you nurture it, and how do you look at the education that's imparted in that field in early on in schools and everything?
I don't, at school, I think I was taught in a very standard way only, but I had access to many books throughout my career, throughout my life, in fact, and so that definitely helped because I had access to plenty of Soviet books in on mathematics, and those books definitely maintain standard, but they don't follow a very new kind of teaching or anything like that. They're very rigorous, but that I liked, of course, from the beginning. That is one thing, and of course, it at school, of course, they don't teach properly in most of the. Yeah, in India, of course, in India, most schools don't follow, say, what is called student-centric education. That is, you allow the student to learn by themselves instead of the teacher getting mm, into the discourse directly and at all times. So that's the essence of student-centric teaching, and that definitely helps in improving the interest of students in any subject, in mathematics and in other subjects too. And that's what I advocate usually. And I'm actually part of the Mathematics Education Society also. There we deal with innovative teaching methods and also look at the sociological aspects in a deeper way. And yeah, and it's important to teach in a student-centric way and let the students think. They can learn through experiments or through other methods, but that but they should be allowed to do all that themselves rather than the teacher interfering at all times. And that is what happens in school. Often students just listen to what the teacher says. That's how schools often are, and I think that is more important. Yeah, and there are tools like, say, for example, there are tools like GeoGebra and others, and students can actually try to learn through those things also by themselves. The teacher is not always essential, but they can help in facilitating the discourse. That should really be the purpose of teaching. Yeah.
This is very interesting, Professor. I hope a lot of the teachers who would be listening to this podcast take a note out of this, because I think that's very important. Because all of us have been part of this education system, which really doesn't push you to think of a certain thing yourself. There's always that, oh, the teacher is right. What you have to just follow a sort of there's a line, like teacher is at the front and you just have to follow them. So I hope that when they listen to this, they take a leap out of what you said. Going forward, Professor Mani, STEM, like most other fields in our country, displays sort of a glaring lack when it comes to a gender equal representation. That is something that has been talked about again and again. And also, like when we add to that the fact there's hardly any representation or very little that is visible when it comes to researchers and scientists from the queer community, from the LGBTQ plus community. How do you think that this can be addressed and sort of fixed or worked around? What do you think is the way for this?
Yeah, this is a big problem. LGBTQ people are, of course, persecuted everywhere due to mainly backward religious beliefs and colonial era conditioning of substantial sections of the population. That much can be said. And it is not easy for discriminated people to improve their quality of life without a good education. That is always true. But, and moreover, yeah, in India, the situation is something like, as far as gender equality is concerned, the percentage of girls in courses such as BSc Math is high. That is because it is not considered as something in which one can build a career. That is one point. And then private colleges also do not maintain standards when it comes to admission criteria and such. And that's one of the reasons for the percentage of girls being higher in such courses. But when it comes to higher education beyond that, the percentages are much, much lower. This is one problem. And when it comes to LGBTQ community in STEM, what is happening is most of the people are still closeted. There are WhatsApp groups and things like that for LGBTQ people in STEM, but uh, but most are still closeted at different levels. And if they come out, it will definitely help. But because of possible discrimination, they don't do. And even now, there are no special courses or reservation in courses and academic course for LGBTQ people. Say, and of course, both horizontal and vertical reservation is necessary. But what is happening now is that no posts are being filled and new ones are not being created. So even if they actually state a reservation, it may not be, it may just become a farce. That is how the situation is, and the government has to invest more in education first of all. The percentage related to GDP is too low. Even in USA like countries, they invest almost 5% of the GDP. Here it is much less than 1%. Of course, for the LGBTQ community, there must be more sensitization. We need to have more sensitization programs, but not many are happening. And even when things are attempted, we face backlash from the right-wing forces and others. That problem is there. Even though there are LGBTQ people within the right wing.
And Doctor, talking about how there's a pushback politically and socially and everything, you did mention before that you transitioned around the time when you were doing your PhD. How was that? I mean, it was PhD is also a very intense time in a person's academic career. So, how was that phase like? What kind of support did you get from your institutions where you were pursuing your PhD, your teachers? Of course, it's not an easy process. It takes a lot of toll. So, could you speak a little bit about how you managed to do that, and also side by side, pursue your academics, which also requires so much of your time and your mind space? How did you cope? How did you do it? How was it possible for you?
Yeah, in my case, it was quite different because I already published a lot. So basically, I had to just combine a few papers and then call it my thesis. It was something like that. So and yeah, while transitioning, because during my PhD, one of my issues was yeah, getting all the documents. Getting for one of the problems was to update all my documents. That took some effort, of course, and otherwise the transition, of course, for a person to transition, they may need around 6 months of rest or something like that, ideally. But I could manage with much less, and it was a bit difficult, but it was okay. It was not too problematic, but yeah, and a related point is that for those who want to transition, they should be allowed to take a medical leave, especially when they have a full-time job or something like that. And yeah, during yeah, so the getting the documents updated involves some work at least. And as far as my teachers were concerned, yeah, my advisor was okay with all that. So, and even the my documents update from the university was quite easy. I just had to update my passport and then get my other documents updated. So that happened quite smoothly. But and otherwise it was mostly fine. I didn't face too many issues.
Professor, sort of bringing our conversation uh, to some bit of a conclusion, one final question that I would like to ask is, what would be your message, one message or advice to young scholars, to early career women and queer researchers who venture into the field of STEM, into the field of mathematics, with a lot of apprehension, a lot of doubts? What would be that one message or advice that you would like to give them?
For okay, for early career women and LGBTQ researchers, right? So the current scenario is, of course, hardly pro STEM, as I said earlier, and proactive in relation to policies like, that relate to STEM and LGBTQ communities, and we should be proactive related to policies followed, the things being taught, and to consider careers that go beyond what is prescribed. That is very important, because if you really want to do research properly, I think you should know how to go beyond what is allowed or what is funded actually. For right now, we don't see much funding for pure streams at all. We hardly see, and plus there is a pressure to do things which are closer to engineering like subjects, and all basically duplicate what is already done in specific contexts. So this kind of work gets some funding somehow. And even in institutions like ISI, that's the situation. There's always this struggle between education and commerce, education and industry. That's what they call it. But the actual problem is much worse. And so one has to be aware of that. And they should, of course, be fully qualified in feminism and how to apply feminism. That is very important. And if they don't understand all that, they always get into trouble. So this applies to women and other LGBTQ people too. And this applies to even their personal relationships, because there also problems can happen, and they do happen, and that causes mental health issues and other issues. So it's important to be very clear about how to apply, and they should participate in forums like so there are many forums in the country, so they can participate all over, and also in the social media too, that are dedicated for such purposes. And there are many like Reddits. There is also this Feminism in India. Facebook sites are there, and I think they may have. Yeah, there is also the Telegram channel, but of course that is not uh, used for discussions. Yeah, we should have, I think, more discussion channels. There are few WhatsApp groups for LGBTQ people, and those are helpful definitely. And people do state their problems and all. And recently, one teacher got fired from their job, and they raised plenty of noise in various communities. And yeah, something has been done for them.
I hope that everyone who is listening to this feels inspired. I'm sure they will, and that a lot more people from the community get a lot more access and a lot more courage from people like you who have been leading the way. Thank you so much for this conversation, for giving us your time, for speaking about your personal experiences, so that everybody else who needs it can draw strength from it. It's such a courageous and such an important fight that you're fighting for everybody else out there. We're so thankful that you gave us this time and you had this conversation with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, the right team. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. It has been a pleasure. That's all, everyone. We'll be back with yet another episode of Intersectional Feminism Desi Style Season 3. Stay tuned and stay safe.